Long ago, when the pyramids were still young, Egyptian kings played a game of great and terrible power. But these shadow games erupted into a war that threatened to destroy the entire world, until a brave and powerful pharaoh locked the magic away, imprisoning it within the mystical Millennium items. Now, 5,000 years later, a boy named Yugi unlocks the secrets of the Millennium Puzzle. He's infused with ancient magical energies, for destiny has chosen him to defend the world from the Shadow Games, just as the brave Pharaoh did 5,000 years ago. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Swords of Reviewing Light. I am Logan, and I am here with
Austin, his co-host for this wonderful podcast.
And we are here to review the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, one duel at a time.
Yep, today we are starting with the very first episode, and we will be going through there, covering each duel in one podcast. So some episodes of our podcast might be a little short. This first episode probably will be a little short since we're just covering episode 1, but we don't want to leave you hanging when we get to these big duels that happen later in the season, so we'll plan to just cover those all at once.
Yes, so today we watched Yu-Gi-Oh! The Heart of the Cards. And as a brief summary, Yu-Gi-Oh! And his friends are in awe over Grandpa's collection of duel monster cards. But when number 1 ranked duelist and ruthless tycoon Kaiba kidnaps Grandpa to get the rare Blue-Eyes White Dragon card, Yugi must face Kaiba in the ultimate duel monster showdown to avenge his Gramps.
So this episode starts out with the little intro that you heard at the beginning of this episode, giving people, I guess, a backstory on what's going on. I have my thoughts on it, but we'll get to that later. The first scene shows Yugi in the classroom playing with Joey, and Joey is apparently just now learning how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And really sucks to face that guy who just happens to have all of the best cards, doesn't it?
I know. It's almost like he lives in a place where he gets free cards all day.
Right? It's funny because Kaiba is the villain of at least this episode with his power and his money, and he thinks only about the strongest cards. And the very first thing we see is Yugi just beating over Joey with a 1500 attack point monster when Joey seems to be playing 800 attack point monsters. It's kind of funny to look at for me.
Yeah. So after that we meet Tristan, who completely botches the name of duel monsters, calling them dueling monsters. And we also meet Taya, who says that Yugi and Joey have been dueling for hours, which I'm wondering how, considering this is the very beginning of the game. They don't really have to do much.
I mean, they could have been playing multiple games, but also they seem to be in school right now. So that has to be the question of, I guess they're probably just playing a game, classes ended, but they haven't been, officially released yet. So they're just playing a game. But apparently they've been dueling for hours? I don't know. Just to make it clear, too, because I realized we didn't mention this earlier, we are covering the dub, just because that's what we grew up with, and we want to kind of relive our childhood. This is a nostalgia podcast. It's what it is.
Pretty much. Yeah, so and also Yugi mentions, hey, how about they go over to his basically home and his grandfather's game shop after school so they could see his grandpa's super rare awesome super card.
Meanwhile, Kaiba scowls in the distance going, super rare super card? I must have.
So they go off to the game shop where we meet Solomon Moto, Yugi's grandfather, who shows the guys his ultra super card, the Blue-Eyes White Dragon, which he explains that there are only 4 of in the world.
Of course, he's not going to sell it to anyone because it's very sentimental to him, and he speaks about that. And it gets a little bit more intense when the music goes randomly intense. We're in a card shop. Why is the music so intense? It's because Kaiba walks in. And Kaiba, he wants the Blue Eyes White Dragon, and he'll do anything it takes to get it.
So before Kaiba sees the Blue Eyes card, he happily makes fun of Joey, which becomes one of the funny things throughout the series. So what did he say to Joey again?
He says, I'd have more challenge playing solitaire, which, well, I think most people probably see the first episode, and he's about to prove later in this episode that it is more challenging to play solitaire.
So yeah, Kaiba then sees the Blue Eyes White Dragon card and offers an entire briefcase full of rare cards. Even one card that you basically never see throughout the show, a polymerization.
Yeah, I find that funny, because he obviously has polymerization, but, like, at least for the first season, they really don't play polymerization. It's not a card that barely ever sees play. They use it in like, I believe, is it like the first showing of it in the Pegasus duel?
No, I know that they use it a couple times, but not many.
Yeah, I know that, like, Thousands Dragon, that just, they completely forgot about that being a fusion. Same with Flame Swords and pretty much every card in Joey's deck.
Yeah. So yeah, Grandpa basically says no to Kaiba's offer, and Kaiba offers to pay him basically any amount he wants for it, and he refuses again, saying that there's more to cards than just power. It's about the heart of the cards.
This does not compute for Seto. He does not understand what feelings are. He only understands what big numbers are. And Blue Eyes has some pretty big numbers.
Yes, so I believes and talking about how stupid the heart of the cards is. And then we head over to Kaiba Corp, and we, for about 5 seconds, where he talks about essentially kidnapping Solomon Moto.
And then he does. Well, not personally. He sends a really creepy bald guy who, if I recall, never shows up again. Like, he just kidnaps a grandpa and then gets away with it. Like, there's no repercussions for him.
Well, I'm not sure if he really did kidnap him, considering it sounds like Grandpa wanted to duel him to show him what for.
That is true. But he definitely looks like the guy that would have been willing to kidnap him if he didn't say yes.
He did bring along 2 big guys in suits, so yeah.
And big guys in suits are the scariest things you can see. It's terrifying.
And afterwards, Yugi and his friends get to the game shop, wanting to look at some more cards. And then the phone rings, and it's
Conveniently.
Kaiba. And it's Kaiba, saying that he has dueled his grandfather, he beat him, and to come over and pick him up.
Which, it's just, like I mentioned, really convenient. Like yeah, they went to school together, so he probably has, like, he has a bit of an idea of when Yugi would get home, but I doubt he has an exact idea for how far it would take Yugi to get to the game shop. So, like, I just imagine he just kept calling. Just kept calling. It's like, okay, maybe he'll be home now. Nope. Okay. Let me try again. Nope. Still not there. Okay. Maybe he'll be here now. Ah, good. He picked up.
So they rush over to the Kaiba Corporation building and ride up the elevator to, I guess, the top floor. And, oh, hey, Grandpa had a heart attack.
I mean, it's never specifically mentioned that's what happens, at least in the dub. But, like, you kind of put 2 and 2 together. Like, what would have happened to him that would have been caused by giant holograms? It'd probably spook him pretty well. It'd probably be a bit more than his old body could take.
Yeah. So Kaiba explains that he defeated Grandpa, and he apparently Grandpa bet the Boy Toy Dragon card, and Kaiba rips it in half.
Man, Kaiba really likes this whole playing for cards thing. Brings it back in Battle City, too. He just loves being able to steal people's powerful cards.
Yeah, it seems a little weird that he likes it now, but won't like it when he makes it school later on. Makes it illegal.
Look, he wants to make sure he can be powerful. He doesn't want anyone else being powerful.
That is true. Though he does learn how to play the game a lot better by then, so that makes sense then. But, yeah, he rips up the card, and Grandpa's like, Yugi, take my deck and kick his ass.
It's dangerous to go alone. Take this.
So, Tristan and Taya take Grandpa off to the hospital in the ambulance that just showed up the moment that they got downstairs.
Well, let's make this clear. They were obviously waiting at least a few minutes because Taya had time during this moment, before the ambulance got here, to draw this weird circle of friendship on everyone's hands. With the marker that she just happened to have on her. Like, why does she have a permanent marker on her? She didn't have a backpack on her. It's not like she still had, like, her school supplies on her, did she? Like, why does she just carry around a permanent marker? The world will never know. But we do know that this episode, the first episode of the entire series, is only 11 minutes in, and we're already seeing the power of friendship.
And remember, it is an important theme. So yeah, Tristan and Taya head off with Grandpa over to the hospital while Yugi faces off against Kaiba. And then we get the most awesome thing this series has to offer. The transformation.
Yugi, the male magic girl of this series.
Goes through puberty in a matter of seconds. And this is like one of the very few times it's ever commented on, because Kaiba actually is a bit surprised at it.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, so many characters can just accept that suddenly this kid they challenged to a duel is taller and has a slightly deeper voice. But no one ever asks a question about it. This is really one of the few times where a character's like, what?
I think it's only ever brought up like one more time by an opponent.
Well, we'll see when we get there, won't we?
Yes, we will. But back to this episode. Kaiba has set up their duel, and he summons his first monster, the Hitatsumi Giant.
Which, with the world of holograms, is way more gigantic than Yugi was expecting. Though it does have to make you think, what exactly was he expecting with them being so far apart? Was he just convinced that Kaiba just refused to be anywhere near poor people? Because I think that's what this is implying.
Possibly. So, and then Joey comes back in, and he's like, "Oh my god, giant monsters!" Which he just ran in and saw this field for the first time, so he gets a pass on that.
Yeah, he gets a pass. He has no idea what's going on. He just walked in, and suddenly there's a kaiju fight going on between a giant and, what was the first monster Yugi summoned? Wasn't it, Winged Dragon of the Fortress number 1?
Yeah, Winged Guardian Dragon of the Fortress.
Yes, that's one. Winged Guardian Dragon of the Fortress.
Yeah,
number 1.
Yeah, so he destroys Kaiba's monster, and it actually have an interesting scene where Kaiba's little platform that he's standing on actually shakes and moves.
Yeah, you wonder if does the platform kind of have these hydraulics in it to simulate the blast back you would get from something exploding, or the hologram's just really that realistic?
Well, considering how they end up later, possibly.
Well, mind you, this is like his first version of the tech. He hasn't got to the point where I think his holograms can electrocute a lake.
Very true. But Yugi gets the first blow. And then Kaiba basically shakes it off and then summons a clown.
Yes, he summons a clown. A dark clown. Sengen, the dark clown, to be specific. A pretty weak monster, but this brings up the moment where I feel like you get a sense of how Yu-Gi-Oh! Was originally conceived to be played as. He plays a weak monster, and then he equips it with a special equipped spell, well, in this case, magic, because we're still back then, card, and boosts its attack points up to 1800, which is stronger than Yugi's monster. In fact, back then, that was stronger than any level 4 monster. So you can kind of see where this whole idea of like manipulating the monsters on the field with equipped spells and with trap cards kind of was an idea, and it's interesting to see how far it's changed.
Yeah, if I'm correct, at the time there may have been only like 4 or 5 4-star monsters that had more than 1800 attack points.
Yeah, and even then, like, if it depends on exactly when this came out in Japan. Like, there might not even been that. I know for...
I believe it came out in 2000.
We joke about the 1500 dragon that Yugi summons at the beginning being super powerful, but in this realm, yeah, that was pretty powerful. That was a really powerful card. Of course, later we find out that in this world of Yu-Gi-Oh! There is no such thing as tribute summoning, so it kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, so Kaiba equips his monster with a spell card and destroys Yugi's monster. And proceeds to destroy several of Yugi's monsters.
Yeah, he goes like a full 3 turns just attacking Yugi's face-down monster. And I don't think I've ever related to Kaiba more than this moment. Because I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! And man, it sucks when you draw your card and you're like, oh, that's useless. I guess I just attack his face-down monster. Man, I really wish I could draw a good... Attack your face-down monster. Okay, this turn Blue Eyes. Okay, this can work. I can do something with this.
And especially because it seems... They never mention it, but it seems that direct attacking doesn't happen.
Yeah, if I recall reading, at this point in the anime, the rules specifically state you aren't allowed to direct attack, which does mean that Yugi's plan is sustainable, and it does, I guess, make some sense. Kaiba wouldn't want to play his Blue Eyes if he doesn't need to. Because even back then, Dark Hole existed, Raigeki existed, and Kaiba is an incredible duelist, as the anime tells us, so, we'll give him benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just was playing smart and not top-decking the worst cards possible.
Yes. So then, Yugi finally gets a interesting card, Eye of the Fierce Knight, one of his iconic monsters throughout the series. And he attacks and destroys the Sagi the Dark Clown, dealing more damage to Kaiba.
But, as I mentioned, Kaiba finally drew a Blue Eyes, and that Blue Eyes White Dragon comes down to the field, the iconic sound effect. God, I love that sound effect. Like, it's really bad when you look back at it. Like, it doesn't sound that great. But I couldn't imagine Blue Eyes making any other sound effect. It just works for him. And his Blue Eyes obliterates the guy of the Fierce Knight with, what was it, White Lightning attack in this one?
They haven't even given an attack name yet.
Oh yeah, they haven't even given an attack name yet, that's right. I can't remember, did they give Sengen an attack name earlier?
Seigen,
I should say.
Sagi, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it was like Black Lightning or something like that.
I can't remember if they actually gave attack names yet, which is kind of weird considering it became a bit of a staple of the series to call out your monster's attacks.
In fact, actually, it doesn't even call it an attack, it just attacks by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So then, This goes by for a few turns.
Yep.
Kaiba
Two more
destroying more monsters.
Two more turns of set pass, set pass. Once again, I can relate.
Then Kaiba gets a second Blue Eyes White Dragon out in the field. And then Yugi manages to hang on for just a little bit longer by by activating the spell card, the Swords of Revealing Light.
Confusing with our podcast name, are you?
Just a tad.
Yeah. Yes, the Swords of Revealing Light. I actually had forgotten originally that it showed up this early in the series, but yeah, very first episode is what helps Yugi survive as long as he does against the might of the Blue Eyes. It's also important to point out, well, not important, I just think it's interesting. This is actually the first case we see of a card having a different anime effect. Very first duel, we see a card have a different effect in the anime than it does in real life. In this, we see Swords of Revealing Light having the effect of monsters currently on the field cannot attack for 3 turns, as opposed to how it really works, where it's just flat, your opponent can't attack for 3 turns.
Which then brings to Kaiba summoning Judge Man, in which, because it was played after the Swords of Revealing Light was activated, it's able to attack one of Yugi's monsters and destroy it. But Yugi then gets the most iconic card he has in his deck, which you would never know from just this episode, I guess, at the Dark Magician.
Yep, Dark Magician enters the field and defeats the Judge Man, and then almost immediately gets killed by the third Blue Eyes that Kaiba has in his deck, bringing Yugi to the realization that Kaiba is just kind of a jerk, and decided to get the fourth Blue Eyes just so no one else could use it against him.
And meanwhile, during the duel, Yugi has been collecting these really strange cards. He has 2 legs and 2 arms. And then he remembers
only one arm at this point, mind you.
Yeah,
it's not until after he has a random conversation with the spirit of his still alive grandpa that he actually draws I want to say it was one of the arms that he was missing.
Yeah, in which he remembers a time when he was talking with his grandfather, and he learned about the card Exodia, in which how apparently no one has ever summoned it. But Solomon Moto has collected all 5 pieces. Which is a bit strange, has he never held off on a duel of winning just to be able to summon it?
I mean, to be fair, I don't think he dueled often. Like, this was his deck, and this was obviously something he cherished and he gave to Yugi, but we never really see much signs of him being a big duelist himself. He seemed more interested in collecting and selling the cards as opposed to specifically playing.
Yeah. And later Yugi's down to 400 life points left while Kaiba has 1,000. Yugi has no cards on the field, and Kaiba has 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons. Kaiba tells Yugi to draw his last card so he can finish him, which, how is he going to? Unless Yugi summons monster in attack mode. But Yugi manages to, after remembering the power of friendship, draw the one card he needed. Exodia Ben 1.
Can we go back for a moment? That's so true. Because of the rules that they're playing by right now, Yugi could just stall forever. Granted, he would lose eventually, but
actually, no.
If I recall, Kaiba had the first play. So
yeah.
Kaiba would deck out first, so technically Yugi could have just kept setting monsters forever and win. And I don't think that would have made him quite the same hero of the anime, the king of games, but it technically would have been a win.
Yes, it would have. But in order to keep that from happening, he draws the head of Exodia the Forbidden One, releasing it from its seal and defeating Kaiba.
Exodia! Obliterate!
Yeah, this is such a quotable scene. I love this scene still to this day.
Yeah, there's not too much that is very quotable from the series, but definitely this is one of those big moments. Especially because this is the first real duel in the whole series.
Yeah, the only other duel we saw up to this point was Yugi curb stomping Joey, which really wasn't much of a duel.
And we were also on the last turn, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Kaiba loses, and Yugi tells Kaiba to learn from this, become a better duelist, and to remember the heart of the cards. And then
he crushes his mind.
And proceeds to put him into a coma.
Yugi's a great person, but also I sometimes wonder if the whole being an Egyptian pharaoh thing and not really from this time, like sometimes that comes to him, it's like that's not Yugi, that's not proper like etiquette. You don't do that to someone.
Well, and we see that Grandpa, who we have seen a couple times throughout this episode after he's been taken to the hospital, and, well, not said here, apparently went through surgery. He wakes up and apparently is 100% fine now.
And it turns out it's, law of equivalent exchange. One person enters a coma, one other person has to wake up, and it just so happened to be Yugi's grandpa, who instinctively knows that my boy has won a card game. Good for him.
No, maybe Yugi made sure that it was he made sure that it was his grandpa that woke up from the coma.
Ancient Egyptian magic, you never can be sure. Speaking of ancient Egyptian magic, shortly after this we get our first look at this arc's major villain, as an assistant comes in and informs Pegasus that Kaiba has been defeated. And all we get is a little smirk and chuckle from good old Pegasus. And that is where the first episode ends.
So, what do you think of this episode? Because I love this episode. It's a great intro to the series and leaves some foreshadowing for things to come.
It's hard not to like this episode. Like, if I look back at it, like, from just like a constructive thing, I made a lot of jokes as we were going through this. I pointed out a lot of things that didn't quite make sense, but it was entertaining enough. You can just put that aside. Like, there's nothing that like is plot breaking. There's nothing that makes you go like, wait a second, that shouldn't work like that. All those extra turns I joke about him attacking, those let Yugi have enough cards in his hand so he could actually play Exodia. So they didn't even like skimp on that. It's like, oh, he just suddenly has enough cards in hand. They actually at least put some thought into that. And although the rules aren't what we know them to be today, if I recall, when they were making this, they didn't really know what the official rules were going to be. So they just sort of did their own thing, and I think it works. I think it's. I've seen worse. I've seen much worse card games. I've played much worse card games.
Yeah, this show, already, even without truly knowing the rules, you already got a sense for, honestly, most of them. Put a monster in attack points in attack mode. You attack, the loser gets damage equal to the difference between their attack. In defense mode, you don't take any damage.
Yeah, and they had the basics down. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, you could really actually tell like that kind of. Just the other day, I was looking through the old original set, the Legends of Blue Eyes set, and you could tell they originally just planned the game to be this like, you summon a monster, you battle with the opponent's monster, you're using equip spells to boost up your monster so it's even stronger than it should be, you're playing field spells that make it so your monsters are stronger than they should be, and then once you have enough resources on the field, you tribute them off to create a huge monster, and your opponent has to try to deal with it. And like every deck might have a couple, like have trap holes as like a, oh god, that thing's really big and scary. But also every deck had a monster reborn, so it could bring it back if it got too bad. Like you can kind of see what the idea was in the original, and this episode actually did, I think, a pretty decent job of conveying that, which is something I don't see people mention a lot about it.
Yeah, most often you just see people complaining about how, oh, the rules are being broken constantly, when around this point I don't believe the rules were even created yet.
Yeah, I know I've heard that a lot. I haven't actually looked too much into it myself, I'll admit, so if it was just a rumor that got unconfirmed or whatever, that's fine. But as far as I'm aware, they didn't really know what they were doing, and I thought they did a really good job, all things considered. I will still poke fun, trust me. When we get to Bones' duel and the wonderful anime effect of Call of the Haunted, I am going to make tons of jokes about that. But it's also the anime, and I let something slide. I can't help it.
Yeah, very much. So yeah, we're done with this episode of, the anime. I was thinking we could get into basically our experience with Yu-Gi-Oh! And how we came to find out about it.
Yeah, since this is going to be a little bit of a shorter intro episode, might as well let you guys know our backstories so you kind of understand where we're coming from when we're looking at these episodes. Logan, would you like to start?
Sure. Let's see. I can't exactly remember when I first started. I believe it was probably 1999 or 2000. I remember being in my aunt's house and my dad suddenly talking about this new card game coming out called Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time, all I had watched was Pokemon, really, and I thought this was interesting. So we started watching when it started coming out. We always would record it on our old VHS, and I would always watch it that Monday morning. It was a lot of fun. Always got cards whenever we could, and I've pretty much been playing and watching ever since.
For me, I mean, it's very similar. I can't tell you exactly what the date was, but I just remember this anime being my introduction to Yu-Gi-Oh! It worked, let's be fair. This anime was, in many ways, a big advertising campaign, the same way that the old Transformers and G.I. Joe shows were. The purpose of the show was to get you interested into this card game, and it worked for me. I remember I had the original Yugi and Kaiba starter decks. I had the Joey starter deck. I had 4 copies of the Pegasus starter deck because even as a kid I really liked Pegasus. And so I've just been playing ever since. I did fall off as far as watching the anime, which will be interesting if we do keep this up long enough and we start getting into things like 5Ds and future. I will have seen bits and pieces, but I'm not I haven't sat down and watched the whole thing, and so it will be kind of interesting getting my first time viewing reactions, I think, looking back at that stuff that I think honestly has a bit worse of a rep than it should just because it's different. I think it's the same way with a lot of series animes like this, like Pokemon, Digimon, etc., that had that first season, everyone's like, this is what I love, and then they did another season that changes things, and they're like, ugh, this isn't what I remember. But yeah, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever since. I'm in a bit of a hiatus right now, mostly because there's nowhere around me that plays, and even so, I'm just bad at the link. Links are a mechanic that I suck at. I am so bad at figuring out all these combos to get the link monsters I need on the field and that stuff. So I've just kind of stepped back for now, but I still enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! I still keep up with the news. It's still something that's near to my heart.
Yeah,
My heart of the cards. Oh.
yeah, it's been very dear to my heart forever. I still have a lot of old cards. I'm pretty sure somewhere around here I have my very first card, which, if I'm correct, was a monster egg.
Ah, just those classic vanilla monsters that had no stat, like no effects, nothing special, but they still hold a special meaning for one reason or another. I mean, it's a little bit older, a little bit relatively newer, especially when compared to those. But I remember Choco and Pachi and that whole series of cards. As a kid, I loved, like, because I played a fire deck, I played a pyro deck. I would have said it was a burn deck, but it was only like incidentally a burn deck because I'm a kid. I don't quite know how to build a deck, so I just put fire monsters in there, and some of them happen to do burn damage. And I just loved having this Choco and Patchy, this big 2100 defense monster that I just set face down, and someone would always attack into it, and they'd always take some chip damage, and I would just be like, yeah, go Choco and Patchy, you rock.
I actually still remember how I got my first card. Like, you know those sticker machines that you put like
Yep.
little coins in
Yep.
and you push it
Yep.
back? Yeah, at the restaurant my dad works at, back when Yu-Gi-Oh first came out, they had a bunch of those cards in one of them. So my dad would always get some, and then would always get a couple, and then bring them home to me.
I remember there being a little vending machine like that in a Kmart that I used to go to. And yeah, I remember putting, hoping to get a quarter so I could put it in and get a random card, and always hoping for that. Like, they said you could get a Dark Magician, and you never did, but I could get a Dark Magician.
But you
So,
just
yeah.
settled for the Yugi deck. You get it.
Yeah. I mean, classic art on the Yugi deck and the Kaiba deck. Can't go wrong with those.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a decent amount of content for this first podcast. Sincerely hope that anyone who has made it this far and listened through, I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you for listening this far. We're just doing this for fun, really. We enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's an excuse for us to go back and rewatch a series. Why not? Logan, take it away with the closing info.
All right. You can find me on Twitter at Amagayo1 or on YouTube by the same name. And Austin, where can they find you if you want to put out something out there?
You can't.
Okay, then.
I don't really have a lot of. I don't really have like a Twitter or anything set up. I know I'm old fashioned. But I prefer my Facebook and whatever. But if you want to contact me, probably the easiest way would be to use this podcast's official email. Logan, you want to share that with them?
Yes, if you want to send an email to us, you can send one at reviewinglight@gmail.com. That's REVIEWINGLIGHT. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.